Welcome to the Florida Trail Runners Podcast. Out in the woods, out in the swamps, down by the Willie Coochie. It started with a podcast, now it's a thing. The Florida Trail Runners. Florida Trail Runners.
All right, here we are with episode 133 of the Florida Trail Runners podcast. And on the chat, we've got Ashlyn Poulin, a race walker for Southeastern University. And she is coming off an incredible performance at the NAIA Outdoor National Championships, where she was the runner-up in the 5,000-meter race walk. And in the chat, she breaks down exactly what race walking is, the rules that make it unique, and the technique required. We talk about how she got first involved into race walking and what it takes to compete at the collegiate level and the training that goes into mastering such a specialized event. We also recap her experience at this year's NAIA Outdoor National Championships, how the race went down, what was going through her mind during the competition, and what it meant to stand on the podium as the national runner-up. So whether you're a trail runner, a track athlete, a hobby jogger, or simply just curious about one of the most unique events in athletics, this is a fascinating conversation that offers a unique look into the sport that deserves far more attention than it gets. So hey, with that, let's just jump right into it.
River to the St. John's, from Crystal River and the Rainbow Springs. Wiki, Wachi, and Manatees, and the Everglades, Lake Okeechobee.
Hey,
Hello.
how do you feel coming off of the big season this year? I saw that you were the runner-up at the NAIA Outdoor National Championships this year.
It was good. I mean, the race itself, was fairly decent. Me and Heather Durant, I love racing with her in general. She's just like one of the best people to race with. And so I knew going into that race that it was going to be, me and Heather, and it was just great to race with her and finish second.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty cool, too, because it's like 3 straight years of climbing the ladder nationally, too. 7th as a freshman, 4th and 3rd for the sophomore year, indoor-outdoor, and now second for outdoor.
Yeah, it's been, great to be able to get closer and closer to that, national championship title. And I believe that, it's coming, whether it's indoor or outdoor or both. I believe that it will happen. It's just been nice to, get closer and closer, and just to see, the field also get closer and closer.
Nice.
This is my first podcast, so
like all I did for this, I printed off your Southeastern profile and your mile split, and that's all I got.
Yep.
I feel like that's all I really need.
Honestly, I mean, with all the interviews that I've done for, all the races that I've done, like from high school and up, they haven't been like crazy. It's just been a couple questions and that was it.
Nice. Yeah, I probably could have looked those up, but
I think the last one that I had was my freshman year of college, and it was an indoor race that they interviewed me on.
Nice. I like track and field, so if I could find an excuse to throw track and field onto the podcast, I do.
Yeah. And I mean, it's nice that, race walk isn't a very, popular and well-known sport. So it's kind of nice that, you reached out and I get to kind of talk about it and have people listen and, learn about it. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, because other than my DQ, I don't know anything.
Yeah.
I tried it because I thought, oh yeah, that'd be easy. I could do it. I could do a 3K. I could do a 3K running. I could do that walking. But everybody's feet were landing like kind of center line. I'm like, now hold up. And I just couldn't break that stride of my legs kept popping out. Then I kept hopping, of course, right in front of the officials every single time.
Yep.
And I made it 300 meters.
Yeah. It's very technical. Very technical.
Oh, I got DQ'd so fast.
Yeah, though they're pretty strict. They don't play around, especially if it's one of those like higher meets, like nationals or something. They don't play.
Which I guess for a lot of people, they don't see the race, the race walk very often. Like I guess how do people really react when you tell them you're a competitive race walker?
A lot of the time I get either like, what's that? Or I don't know that that's a thing. Along those lines, a lot of confusion is typically what I get.
Yeah, that's why I feel like race walking is like, it's misunderstood, but it's also super underrated.
Yeah, it is. It is a very underrated sport. A lot of people think it's a lot easier than it is. And a lot of times I have to tell people, you know what, if you think it's easy, then then go do it on the track and come to me afterwards.
Well, some people like me just end up getting disqualified.
Yeah, that's also a kind of like a told you so to some people when they're like, oh, it can't be that hard, and then they go and get DQ'd, and I'm like, oh, well, told you.
And I guess that, if we go all the way back, when you first got into running or race walking, how did that start?
Yeah. So honestly, I started race walking when I was 12, and it started because I grew up in Maine, and at my school, it had been kind of like a new addition to the track and field. So they had just started adding it into our track meets, and my coach at the time had asked the whole team, like, if anybody wanted to try it. And at this point in track, it was like my first year of track, and I had tried everything under the sun. I tried jumping, I tried throwing, I tried running. I'd always been a runner, so running has, I naturally was doing that, but I wanted something else to do during track rather than just running around in a circle. So I tried it and I learned the form, and that season I was undefeated in our conference. So I kind of just stuck with it and continued to do it and got faster. And then, I got to high school. Freshman year, I didn't have a season because of COVID. But then my sophomore year, I got back into it. I was training for it, went to states, and then, kind of continued from then.
What I thought was interesting, I didn't realize that some high schools had race walking, because I grew up in Ohio and I don't remember ever seeing it as an option growing up.
Yeah, it wasn't. It's more of lately, I don't know how much of it has, moved, but when I was in, school, it was mainly a northern thing. So really the people who knew about it were people in Maine, New York. There were some people who knew about it out in Oregon and California. But other than that, it's not those middle states, just it wasn't a thing out there. Even down in Florida, there were people who have heard of it, but there were also people who had no idea that it was a thing.
Yeah, and I mean, growing up, obviously you had an undefeated year and then you did well in high school. But was there a point that you kind of realized that hey, I'm actually pretty good at this thing? Was there a specific coach or person that kind of pushed you toward that?
Yes. Actually, it's my current coach. I met my current coach. Her name's Abigail Smith. She was a race walker. Her maiden name is Abigail Dunn. She raced at Goshen. She competed there, and she is also from Maine. And I met her my sophomore year of high school. She was officiating the state meet, and she reached out to my high school coach and kind of just let her know that she does this clinic thing over the summer, and if I wanted to, go and get help or more training and, stuff like that I could go. So I ended up doing that, and I worked with her for the whole summer, and I ended up getting really fast off of her training, and she opened up a lot of opportunities. She got me into, the New Balance Nationals. She got me into the U20s out in Oregon. All that type of stuff. Just she got me into the the road race. She just was able to open up a lot of doors for me and was able to, get that training in and got me faster and got me to where I am now.
Yeah, and I guess kind of with that coaching, that kind of brings into the question of, what is race walking? For people who haven't heard of it before or seen it before, I guess kind of what separates it from running.
So honestly, it's not going to be as different as you think. A lot of people are like, how do you train for that? And it really isn't any different than if you were running. It's just all the workouts that I do, I race walk them. So I could have the same workout as somebody who's running, but I would just race walk it instead to work on that speed and keeping that form and stuff like that. But also with that, while I'm training and while I'm doing those track workouts, I'm also working on, making my form more efficient, making sure that my strides are good and I'm using my arms as much as possible. But it really isn't that different compared to running. I just race walk everything.
And I think that's one of the big things, because a lot of people see how, the hips move a lot for race walking. Take me into that technique. How does that form and the biomechanics work?
Yeah. So honestly, I have a problem with my hips. I guess it's not really a problem, but I would just be more efficient efficient if my hips were to move, back and forth. Mine tend to go up and down. And really essentially what that does is if your hips are going back and forth, you are able to open your stride more and you're able to cover more ground and get faster that way. But I mean, it's just something that you have to work on and something that has to be repeated. When I'm out doing an easy walk or something like that, that's just something that I would focus on. I would focus on, making sure that my hips are going forward and backwards instead of up and down. Not that it's not good to go up and down. Like, obviously, I've gotten this far with it like that, but it just is more efficient and will open my stride more.
Okay.
But
So it seems like hip mobility is pretty king.
yes. Yep. Yeah. I do a lot of hip strengthening and a lot of that type of stuff to keep my hips from getting tight and stuff like that. I just do a lot of, I don't even know the names of them that I do. I'd have to look.
I remember we used to do a lot of the stuff with the hurdles where you're going over, under, and kicking and swinging.
Yeah. I do there's a lot of stretches that I do. And then a big thing for me is I get a lot of glute releases, and that tends to help my hips a lot.
What is that?
A glute release is basically like where my athletic trainer will put their elbow kind of right into my glute and will take my leg and kind of move it back and forth or like side to side to try to get my glute from loosening up, because when my glute is tight, it kind of carries over and kind of makes my hip tight. So it shortens my stride and it's just painful. And I feel like my hip can't move as easily. So I get those sometimes 2 times a week, depending on how heavy I'm training, just to keep my hip from from getting tight, and it keeps it loose.
I mean, even with the hips that you were mentioning, because I know in the ultra marathon side of things, but you do a lot of like run, walk. I guess having your hips looser is a key aspect to that kind of goes with the race walking side of things.
I mean, and like you said, I still get them when I'm running too, just because I do run, but I don't run nearly as much as I race walk. I typically only run for cross season, and then once cross season is over, it's like a switch and I'm straight into race walk the rest of the year pretty much.
I mean, you did say it was kind of close to running, but are there certain things that are a little bit different?
I mean, yeah, the big difference is definitely, I race walk everything. The other difference would be like, before a workout, everybody does drills, right? Just some like, either they'll do high knees or just basic like dynamic stretching. There's specific like race walking drills that kind of get you moving and get your hips moving and stuff like that. So I do some of those, just like we call them baby steps, and it's basically just like we're landing on our heel and walking fast, but our feet are close together type of thing. So like, I don't know how to describe it in a way that like you can imagine it, but it's basically just like taking steps close together and just to like kind of land on your heel and stuff like that. So I do like drills like that. But other than that, I mean, I don't think there's anything crazy different that you would do for race walk rather than running, other than just like the form and working on techniques like that.
The one thing I did hear about the technique was for people who have never done it before, was the whole like, imagine you're pulling a rope and then how your biomechanics change as you're imagining you're pulling a rope moving forward.
Yeah. A lot of the beginners that I've taught, I have them stand on like, on like the track, I'll have them stand on like one of the lines, and we'll have them walk as if they're walking on like a tightrope, because you want to kind of imagine your hip kind of moving that way and landing on your heel. And so if you're imagining like you're walking on like a tightrope, you're kind of walking as if you're putting your heel first, and it gets your hips moving in that kind of direction, the back and forth. So I do that to try to help kind of, we have said like it is like a rope, right? Like say your hips are connected to a rope, right? And somebody's pulling it, so your hip is being pulled forward. That's kind of like an analogy that we've used.
Okay, that makes sense. I think it was like Tim Seaman or somebody I heard that from.
Yeah, I've heard it too, and it makes sense. A lot of the people that I've taught have been like kids, so I've tried to teach it in a way that like they're able to comprehend. Cause I mean, obviously it's not something easy to comprehend. I've even had, older people who have like tried to do it and they just, sometimes it just doesn't click. And it's a hard thing to explain too. It's definitely a lot easier to demonstrate than it is to like kind of explain. But even explaining to some people, it just doesn't click.
I guess that's always the trick. I mean, a lot of things are a lot easier if you just go out and try it and kind of look it up on the YouTube and go go to the track and give it a rip.
Yep. And it is a lot harder for guys than it is for girls. I feel like in the time that I've been at SCU and I have helped with kind of teaching people how to race walk, a lot of the girls that I have taught have been able to get it and have been able to understand it, and they've gotten good. And then I try to go over and teach the boys and they don't really understand it that well.
Maybe that's just the male pride. Who knows?
Yeah, right. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but they just like, they can't understand how to move their hips. They can't understand how to land on their heel and lock their knee.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that is true. You can't really be stiff with it.
Right. Yeah, you have to be, yes. And I think that's a lot of the issue with when you're teaching a guy how to race walk is they're very stiff. They're very tense. That was my brother for a long time. My brother's in high school and he also race walks. And for the longest time when he was first getting into it, he was very stiff. He wasn't relaxed, and that, I think that's something that just comes with time. On the guy's side is they have to get used to it, and then once they're used to it, they can kind of loosen up. But the girls, I feel like it just comes so naturally to us in a way. There's definitely been some girls that just haven't gotten it, but
the word I was looking for was fluidity.
Yeah, right.
And like one of the things that my coach that I had in high school, Bob Schul, I mean, he got the gold in the Tokyo Olympics in the 5,000 meter. But one of the old school tricks that he always told me was if my pinkies are loose, then my shoulders are loose.
Oh.
I would always be stiff when I was running or doing some of the sprints. And he would always remind me, loose pinkies, loose pinkies, and loose pinkies. And somehow, if I dropped my pinkies as I was running, my shoulders would, not be as rigid and stiff.
That's cool. For us, if you're race walking, right, you have your arms are at a different position rather than if you were running. And your arms when you're race walking, you want them to go all the way back. You want them to go as far back as they can. And then, forward. You don't want them to go all the way up though. It's almost like you have a T right at your chest, right? Or like a line at your chest. And you don't want to go higher than that when you're coming forward, but you want to go all the way back until you can't anymore. And if your arms are up high, right? Like if you're stiff, it can give the illusion, or it can even make you look like you're lifting when you're race walking. So my coach is always, whenever she's at the track with me, she'll always yell at me. If my arms are starting to get up high, she'll yell at me, arms. And it's kind of like, you have to drop your arms and bring them back down by your hips and kind of loosen them up again.
That makes sense for my race walk failure because I was more like chicken winged.
Yeah. And that's the other thing too with arms. Like you want them to go back and forth. A lot of new race walkers tend to cross over. They tend to cross in the front. And you don't want to do that. You want to make sure they're going back and forth and that they're at a 90-degree angle and going all the way back.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. It's just interesting how different the biomechanics is from the race walk to the run.
There's so much that goes into it because if your arms are off, then your legs are going to be like your form, is going to be off. And especially if a judge is looking at your arms and they're not, down by your hips and they're not going all the way back, like it's gonna tend to have that official look at you and be like, they're lifting, and they'll paddle you. So having your arms be, nice and relaxed and down and going all the way back not only helps you efficiently, but it also, makes sure that your form is staying, legal.
And with the mention of the paddle, that brings into a good point of like, obviously there's a lot of rules and like the penalty and the judges that goes into race walking.
Yeah. So typically a judge will have two paddles. One paddle will be for a bent knee and the other paddle will be for lifting, meaning your both feet are off the ground at the same time. And then there's a red card, which would mean that you're you have an official is basically putting you in for a DQ. Now, a head judge is the only judge that can actually take you off the track. So in your case, right, you got pulled off the track, right? So in that case, that most likely was the head judge, and they're the only ones that can take you off. Do you remember in that race, did you get shown a red card?
No, they just told me, St. Leo, you're off the track.
They just took you off. And so they don't necessarily have to show you anything. They can't, the head judge can take you off, but typically they'll show you a red paddle, which is like, hey, you're off the track, you know? But that's typically for cases where it's like, you are absolutely running.
Well, yeah, I did end up skipping into the air a few times.
Yeah. They could have made you go the whole race.
Oh, I would have been so mad.
Yeah. That happens to some people.
If they let me go 3K and just go.
Yeah.
I think they knew I didn't belong there. But
it's hard, man.
I also didn't know about like the paddles and cards, so I probably kept going past my card.
Yeah. And typically a judge is supposed to, before you start, they're supposed to come up and talk about the paddles and tell you like, hey, I'm the head judge. These are the paddles. If you see them, you know, the yellow ones are warnings. If you see this red one, like them, you're off the track pretty much. Or, like I said, they can make you go the entire race and tell you're DQ'd after. It kind of just depends on how much of how much of blatantly running you are. If you're more on the line, if you're more like, if they're questioning it, right? If they're more like, you could be running, you could be walking. That's more of like where you would be told if you're DQ'd or not until after all the judge get together and they talk and they're like, this number, we all have this number. All right, he's DQ'd. That's kind of how that works.
Yeah, mine was more like a baby giraffe coming out of the fresh to the ground, trying to move my legs, but I'm so used to running, I just kept kind of skipping into the air.
Yep.
And then I would like drunkenly shuffle my legs and try to get back to race walk, but then I couldn't.
Yeah.
I mean, like, how stressful is judging during a race?
For me, I don't usually stress about it. I mean, in all reality, you're gonna get a paddle here and there. It's just gonna happen because, normally it's for lifting. Normally, if you are a decent race walker, normally you would get a paddle for lifting or something like that, because there will be a time where you're going fast, right? Where, yes, you could be seen as lifting. The thing with race walk though is it has to be to the naked eye. So there could be pictures of me, and I know that there are pictures of me, you know, where both my feet are off the ground. And people have come to me and are like, how is this able to happen? And it's like, well, obviously you can take a picture and you're able to see whatever, but it has to be to the naked eye, because you can't have judges over here taking pictures, you know, all around the track. It's bound to happen at some point, but it doesn't usually make me nervous. I mean, I usually take it as like a sign of advice rather than like I'm doing something wrong. I take it as like, okay, they're telling me that this is what they're seeing. I'm going to try and fix this. And sometimes it just means that I need to slow down a little bit. Sometimes it just means I'm going way too fast to where my form is starting to be illegal. So half the time I just slow down a little bit and kind of regather myself and, you know, focus on landing on my heel a little bit more. The only time that I get nervous is if I come around and I see on like a board. So in races, typically nationals, it's called the DQ board. And what it is basically all of our numbers are on that board. And anytime you get a judge that like tries to DQ you or whatever, or like enters you in for a DQ, you get a thing by your number that shows that. The only time that I would get nervous is if I were to see that on the board, because then I know like, okay, there's definitely something that I'm doing wrong. So I really need to like, you know, get it together and figure out what's happening. But other than that, I mean, they don't usually scare me. I usually just take it as like, okay, I just need to recollect myself.
It's like a wall of shame.
Yeah.
I think Malcolm in the Middle, this might be before you, I don't know.
I've seen Malcolm in the show.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
Yeah, they had an episode about race walking.
Oh, yeah. I watched Malcolm in the Middle when I was younger, so I haven't seen it in a long time, but
I even thought about it in a long time until now.
Yeah.
But I remember they did have an episode about race walking, and they froze a picture of someone in the air. And
Yep.
they're like, see, they're not walking.
Yeah. Unfortunately, you can't take that to a judge and be like, look, I took the picture, they're in the air, and they're like, it has to be to the naked eye. It has to be so blatant that you can really see them actually running. And if you were to put, a picture of somebody doing that and somebody who is actually running or actually lifting to where you can see it in the naked eye, and you put them together on the track and they're racing, you would see a very clear difference of, okay, I can see how this one, you have to take a picture to see that they're lifting, but, to the naked eye, it looks like they're, walking legally. And then you look at the other person where they're just blatantly running. You're like, okay, I can see the difference now. It's so technical. It can be so frustrating sometimes because there's definitely been times where I've raced with people who are like, right on that line where it's like, I'm so deep into race walk where I know that you're running or I know that you're not legal, but to the judges who are on the outside of the track watching, I'm like, I know that they can't see it. That's probably like one of the most frustrating things to me is like we're all racing. And it's like, I can tell, like, I know how this person walks and know that they're not completely legal, but know that it's not as visible to the judges.
I think that, I think you have a lot of that everywhere. I feel like we kind of do take pride in kind of offering that constructive feedback and celebrating others.
Yeah, that's the one thing that I do like about race walk too, is like, if you were to, either be DQ'd or have, like paddles from a judge or whatever, whenever you finish, it is nice to be able to kind of go up to those judges and talk to them and be like, and kind of get that feedback. Like, what did you see that I was doing? And then, so that way I know what I can work on. That's like, and the judges are happy to do it too. Sometimes they'll even approach you. Like if you get DQ'd or something like that, the judges, sometimes they'll even come to you and be like, look, this is what I saw. This is what you can work on. And if you work on this, like, I believe you'll be better by next time. Like there's just like that type of feedback from a judge is very nice.
Yeah, and that's definitely helpful, especially kind of with that community too. Because I feel like the recruiting process when it comes to college, what does that look like for you with race walking?
Yeah, so I knew that if I wanted to race walk in college, that I had to go to an NAIA school because NCAA doesn't recognize race walk as a event. They don't do it, whatever. So I knew that I had to look at NAIA schools. So that's kind of where I started. I looked at NAIA schools and I looked at NAIA schools who were kind of looking for race walkers or who had race walkers and stuff like that. So I reached out to Reinhardt. I talked to Cornerstone for a little bit. I looked at Point Park. I looked at SEU, all that type of stuff. SEU actually reached out to me because if I remember correctly, they saw me racing at Penn Relays. And I think that's how they got a hold of me. But when I was, looking for colleges, I looked for people who were looking for race walkers and who were going to be able to get me to races where I could race walk. And so when that all when I was looking and stuff like that, SU was a very high contender because they were looking for a race walker. They had a race walker there already and were able to get me into races where I could race walk. And same thing with Reinhardt. Those were really the two top schools that I was looking at. And so when it came down to it, SEU was, I went and toured SEU and I loved the campus. Obviously the academics are really great there. And so I ended up going with that because they were able to take me to races and, I was able to keep my coach from high school, the one who got me to all these races. I was able to keep her as my coach going to SEU. And so that was something that I really appreciated also.
That's really big for a university to allow that too.
Yeah.
I feel like that's really good for a program too, to allow that flexibility. Because I think a lot of coaches have that kind of, it's my system or the highway.
Right.
But
yeah. It's been good, being able to keep my coach. I think part of it was just because I had been with her for so long and she kind of learned how I work. And I don't think my coach at SEU wanted to ruin that. I think he was okay with keeping me with somebody that I was comfortable with, somebody who knew me, somebody who knew how I work, knew what I needed, stuff like that. So I was very grateful for that.
I guess, what was the biggest adjustment going from high school to college training?
So when when I was in high school, training like cross country wise, and I guess race walk wasn't different because I had that coach. So race walk training has kind of always been the same. I mean, obviously it's gotten more intense as I've gotten better, but I've always been training hard when it came to race walk. Cross country was kind of a different story because I was the top on the team, but my team, like we didn't do a lot of, workouts, or we didn't do a lot of longer running, and stuff like that. So like, I think the biggest adjustment was coming into college and being put into training that was a whole lot more than I had been used to running wise. But I mean, it's gotten me faster, and, it's gotten me where I am now in cross country. So I'm very grateful for it. But I think that was definitely the biggest adjustment, was just going from very little cross country training to a lot of cross country training.
And I guess it is kind of nice to have that change up between like cross country season. Now we got race walk season.
Yes, I love cross country season. It's kind of always been, I just love to run. It's just something that I purely enjoy. But race walk has definitely always been like a main focus and more of like my serious sport. And so that change is definitely something that I usually get excited for.
Yeah, and I guess coming into that freshman year, you were 7th nationally in that 5,000-meter race walk. And, I know you had a lot of experience with like New Balance, USATF up in Maine.
Yep.
But did you have any idea what to expect for a college race walking championship?
I mean, a lot of the people that were in the field I had known, but I'd always been, with the people that were in that field my freshman year, I was a lot slower than them. My freshman year, I did also, I struggled. I was in a new environment. I, was struggling a lot with, allergies and just a lot of health things that were going on. And so when I went into competing at nationals, I was, I was excited to kind of just be there. And I obviously had a goal and, wanted to do my best, but I think I wasn't expecting, the field to be as big as it was then. The field has gotten a lot smaller now. People have graduated and stuff like that. But when I was there, I think I definitely wasn't expecting it to be as, challenging as it was.
Yeah, it's always interesting that, the things that we learn on that learning curve, especially like it's like the freshman year shock of it.
Yeah. Yep. And just freshman year in general, just a lot to get used to. I was far from home, different weather, a lot of health issues that going on at the same time, just many, many, factors that went into it. But, I was still very, very, proud to finish as an All-American, and obviously made the goals to climb the ladder from there.
And even with that, the All-American finish as a freshman, which is weird that people call them true freshmen nowadays.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that does give you a lot of confidence that you do belong at this level.
Yeah, it was, I mean, obviously I would, 7th place, very proud of being able to be that All-American, but I think that definitely started the hunger for wanting more, wanting to be up that ladder. So coming back the next year, I wanted it and I got further up.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, because your sophomore year, you made that jump on the podium.
Yep.
What changed between your freshman year and your sophomore year from going 7th place to 3rd place?
I think a lot of it had to do, like I said before, freshman year just was a lot of change and far from home and stuff like that. I think the second year, I kind of had a handle on like what it was like to be, in college, and also, training, continued to train, and it got, more intense, and I worked at it really, really hard. And there were things that I changed, I worked on being better about doing my stretches, and worked on, drinking more water, and just all those little things in there that, contributed to me being able to pull out, and be higher up on that podium.
I think, it is, how am I wording that question? I don't know. I think it's different too, because now you're in a more like team environment where you do travel with the team, you do go places with the team, you train
Right.
adjacent to the team all the time.
Yep.
And you do have a lot more driving factors to get that success.
Yeah. And obviously, like, I have bigger goals outside of college, so that's always been a motivator for me. You know, training hard and putting in the work and stuff like that. I just know like you know, college isn't the end for me when it comes to race walk. Like there's more afterwards. So there's also that drive that got me to where it's like, okay, I put in the work now. It's not only going to get me to where I want to go afterwards, but it's going to get me higher up on that podium as well.
Yeah, and that makes sense too, because I know you do indoor and outdoor,
Yep.
which indoor is the 3,000 meter and outdoors 5,000 meter. How different are the tactics between the indoor 3,000 versus the outdoor 5,000?
Well, I would say, you know, one of the differences is strategy, right? Racing strategy. So like timing on when to move or when to make a move and stuff like that. And also, you know, 3K is a faster race because it's shorter. I'm going you know, a faster pace for a shorter amount of time. And so you're kind of limited on time I mean, it's still a longer race, but you still have like a shorter amount of time to make a move and commit to that move, where in the 5K, you have a little bit more time to kind of sit where you're at and then make a move. You know, like I think that's one of the biggest things, the difference between 3K and 5K, other than the fact that, you know, you're going faster in 3K because it's a shorter distance and it's easier, or I shouldn't say easier, it's not easier, but you know, you're going faster.
Yeah, I know some people have that either sit and kick mentality or just go out and go for it mentality.
Right. I'd say go out and go for it mentality is, I don't know how those people do it. You know, I mean, I would love to be one of those people who can, you know, go out and hold it and stay there and, you know, continue to kick. And, you know, it may come, you know, you may have a great day, but I've always been one to kind of sit and then make a move.
Which I guess it makes sense because you did win the Sun Conference indoor and outdoor titles.
Yeah. Yep. And even in those races, like I was alone. Those races, like my Sun Conference, I don't have any competition in those. So unless I'm racing with the boys, then it's kind of a different story because then I kind of have somebody. But even then, you know, I'm still kind of by myself in a way. But if I'm racing with the guys, it is like I still do that sit and then move type of strategy.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I don't know how people just gun it.
In my experience with that, like people who do it, I've seen both sides. I've seen people be able to hold it, but I've also seen people who have done it and gotten swallowed up.
That is true because if you sit and kick, but you don't kick at the right time, then you do get just stuck in that backpack.
Yep.
Or you get boxed in on the inside.
Oh, I hate being boxed in.
It's always a tough decision where on the track you do need to make that move. Is it on the curve? Is it on the straightaway?
Right, it is. Yep. And one of the things that I do is I go over almost every single scenario that could happen. That's something that helps me when I'm, you know, thinking about a strategic race, right? Like nationals, you know, my whole goal was, you know, place, not time. And so being able to go over, you know, and come up with every situation under the sun that could happen and coming up with what I would do in that situation, how I would handle it, what I think the best way to handle it would be. That's something that helps me, you know, kind of prepare for a race.
And I think that's a good point too, because I mean, racing on the track, you can get V'd in with the open back, or you can get triangled in, and then you're just stuck, you know, surrounded by people.
Yep. And one of my favorite races that I ever did was my senior year of high school. I did New Balance Nationals. I started that race at the very back. I was the last person on out of everybody. And I worked my way up all the way to the front, and I sat until I was ready to make a move. Now, that was a mile, so, you know, the time on making a move was limited, but, you know, I go over that race all the time, and I'm like, I know that I can do this. So I know I could start a race where if I were to be in a situation where I could get boxed in, I would let myself go to the back because I know that I can get myself back up.
That does work out since you did have a strong finish.
Right. Yeah. I ended up winning that New Balance Nationals, starting out all the way in the back and then working my way all the way up to the front. And I sat on the first place person at the time. And I sat there until I think we were about to start our second lap was when I made my move on the 100-meter stretch and I made my move, and then she ended up, moving again, and then I sat, but I knew, like, in my head, I made the decision where I was like, I'm going to commit and I'm just going to go. And so I ended up moving again, and that's when I created the gap and was able to hold it and just went.
Which I guess, coming into this year's NAIAs for outdoor, this year's championship, what were your expectations?
Yeah, I mean, my expectation was to just stay with Heather and obviously fight for that first place finish. I wanted to, like I said, I was going for a place and not a time. And because I knew that with the place that I would get, I knew a PR would most likely come with it. And so I knew that I was just, having to fight and stay in it with Heather and kind of stay with her. There was a point in the race where I did decide, or I think there was 5 laps to go. And I decided, you know what, I'm going to go for it and see what happens. And, I did it. Unfortunately, I did slow down, and she caught up, and I tried to stay with her. But it's just one of those things in a race where it's like I'm proud of myself for kind of committing. Even though I did lose it in the end, I still made a decision in a race, and that could have been the best decision, and that could have won me the race, or it left me where, I was in second. But yeah, I'm proud of that race. It's what I was expecting, or I shouldn't say it's what I was expecting, but it's, I didn't have any other expectation other than first or second. So I kind of got, what I wanted.
And I think it does help that, it was your 3rd time at a national championships. Does the atmosphere feel a lot more calmer since you've been there before?
Honestly, no. I still get nervous for nationals. Because through the regular season, I don't have, many competition. I don't go to races where my team doesn't travel outside of Florida usually. So a lot of the races that I do, I'm usually by myself or I'm with the boys. And so when I go to nationals, it's kind of a higher, deal, because now I'm with my competition, and this is the only race that I do with them. So I still get those nerves for that reason. Other than that, I mean, nationals is just always fun in general, but the racing aspect of it never gets easier.
I mean, take me into the start line, like what's going through your mind right at the start line?
Yeah, so honestly, I am a nervous wreck all the way up until I'm on that line and all the way up until the gun goes off. I do a lot of strides, a lot of deep breaths, a lot of talking to myself in my head, just a lot of like reassurance and like affirmations, almost like I can do this, like, believe in the training, like you did this, you got here, you can do this, like you're strong, all that type of stuff, and a lot of praying, like, God, get me through this race. A lot of that type of stuff. And another thing that kind of helps and calms my nerves is talking to the competitors. So I'll talk to Heather. Me and Heather are friends, right? Like, despite what happens on the track, we're friends. We love to talk. We have each other on social media. Like, we are very proud of each other. And so something that helps calm my nerves is talking to her and stuff like that. I just get, I'm just nervous. The anticipation, I think, is really what gets to it. It's like we're doing a lot of waiting around. And especially this past nationals, there was a lot of lightning stuff, so our race got delayed and just a lot of anticipation leading up to it. But once I'm on that line, like, I do a couple more like talking to myself, like, you can do it, stuff like that. And then the minute that they say, set or whatever, it all goes away, and I kind of just like have laser focus on what I need to do.
Yeah, and I guess, because it's 12 and a half laps, I mean, how did that first mile feel?
First mile always feels great. First mile always feels amazing. I always feel, I'm comfortable. I'm ready. Like, I got this, stuff like that. It's more for me when I get into the second half to the first half of the second half of the 2 mile and the first half of the 3rd mile. Third mile. I get a little like, this sucks. But I fought that race. I stayed with Heather, up until 5 laps to go. I, just kept saying to myself in my head, like, just stay with her. Just stay with her. Like, you can do this. Stay calm. I have a lot of, almost like racing anxiety, I guess you could say, where I just get anxious in a race and start to like feel like I like can't do it anymore, or like just get super anxious. And so a lot of the times in a race, I just have to continue to like calm myself down, like remind myself I can do this, like I can stay with her, and a lot of that type of stuff.
Yeah, because as the race was playing out, you get past that first mile, and obviously you only have 2 more to go. But kind of did the pace go out as you expected? Were people making moves early, or was it more patient?
No, I think, me and Heather, from the very beginning, for a while, it was me, Heather, and an evergreen girl. But very shortly after that, like, first lap, or maybe not even a lap, it then ended up just being me and Heather. And I kind of expected it to be that way going into the race. And so then from then on, like, me and Heather just stayed comfortable. I think once we got past the first mile, and maybe like I said, maybe into the second half of the second mile, we kind of picked it up. And that's probably where I started to be like, oh my gosh, I'm dying. But, I stuck with it and I picked it up with her. And, again, that's also why there was a PR that came with the place, is because, we picked it up and worked hard.
Yeah, because I guess from what I've seen, your closing stretch seems, very strong. Did you still have a gear left, or were you just going for it?
Honestly, in that race, I was fighting with everything that I had left. In the past, I had definitely struggled with, I would fall off, but then that last lap would come and I would fly because I had more in me, but I just never reached that spot in a race where I was pushing with everything that I have. So I would always finish with a really, really fast last lap. This race, I was finishing with everything that I had. It was still a strong finish, but not like I had anything left. It was more of just like I'm literally grasping onto anything I can at this point and just finishing.
And there's something just great about, like, when you're digging deep into the well.
Oh, I know, because dropping right to the ground.
But it's like, what did it feel like crossing the finish line, knowing that you were the runner up?
Yeah, I was just proud. Honestly, I was just, I was very proud of, and not even just myself, but I was proud of Heather. Just her story in general, like I was just very proud of her race and how she did. But, I was also very proud of myself for taking a chance in the race, making that move, even though I did end up losing it, just very proud that I was able to take a risk and go for it. And then I was proud of still hanging on to that second place.
Yeah, and I guess, I know you have 1 year left still, but
Yep.
It's a lot of growth, over those 3 years. 7th as
Yeah.
a freshman, climbing every year, and now second in the nation for NAIA.
Yep.
Even with that time, is there an accomplishment that you're most proud of?
I think that would probably be the accomplishment that I'm most proud of, just with that whole race in general, just the decisions I made during the race and, the finish and everything that came in between. Just that was probably like one of the best races that I had. That or indoor. Indoor was another race that was a very good race that I was very proud of and felt very accomplished.
Yeah, and even with that success too, what's probably one of the biggest things about this season that kind of got you there that doesn't just show up in the results?
I'd say, this past year, this past season, my training, went up, my mileage went up, to a spot where I have never, reached before. I was doing really long walks. My mileage was super high. And I think that definitely had, a role in, every accomplishment that I'd done this season was just because of the commitment that I made to, higher mileage, and just the commitment to, doing it and getting it done was definitely an achievement and something to get used to, because my body had never done something that high before, that mileage that high before. So really, being able to commit to it and continue to do it and continue to work for it was definitely an accomplishment.
Yeah, consistency and commitment. Usually those are the 2 big things.
Yeah, it's hard, like there are times where you have to say no to certain things, right? Because the accomplishments that I want later on, require me to be very focused. So being able to, go to sleep at a reasonable time and, maybe having to say like, no, I can't go and do this thing because I have to put my, priorities in my sport. And that can be a really hard thing when you're in college. There's a lot of things that go on and a lot of things that you want to be a part of. And I think that's something that I have been able to, overcome now, and being able to fully commit and being like, I need to start working on these things and being consistent in these things to achieve what I want to achieve.
Yeah, and I guess, we can start to wrap it up with, being part of a niche sport. And I think there's always something special about, athletes who compete in events that really just don't get like the mainstream and the limelight of things compared to others. But I guess if there's a young athlete or a parent with kids listening, they don't want the traditional mold of running, what would you want them to know about race walking, the community, and the opportunities that it can open up?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many opportunities, and I mean, I'll start with the community, right? Like just based off of what I've been saying, about Heather, like my biggest competitor, and we're just proud of each other and we're friends. Like that is a big thing about the race walk community, is everybody just wants everybody to achieve their goals and just wants them to do the best that they can. And I think that's something that I really love about the race walk community, because it almost, yes, it's a race, and yes, we get into that racing mindset when we're on the track, but we can put all things aside when the race is over and just congratulate another. And I think that's a really amazing thing about the race walk community, is that it's there's no trash talk, there's no, I'm better than you, and there's none of that. It's all just, pure, I want you to do the best that you can do, whether that's beating me or not. Like I just love that part of the community. And then opportunities, just like anything, opportunities are endless. There's so many things that you can do with race walk, and you can start at a young age. You can start race walking when you're, oh gosh, I don't even know, young. 'Cause the Junior Olympics, I think they have, quite confident, they have a 8 and under category. So you can race walk when you're, young. So opportunities from there on, like, just are never ending. And I just say go for it. If you want to do something that's unique and has a great community, race walk is definitely a sport to look into. I love it. I love everything that comes with it. So if, there's people out there who are looking for something like that, then yeah, race walk is, the way to go.
Perfect. Awesome.
All right. Yeah. Well, thank you. This was very fun. Honestly, podcasts are fun. So
Yeah, I appreciate it. It was awesome.
yes. Well, like I said, I look forward to hearing it. And
all right. Well, hey, thank you.
thank you. All right. Well, thank you. Bye.
Out in the woods, out in the swamps, down by the Willie Coochie. It started with a podcast, that's the thing. The Florida Trail Runners, I see the skunk ape, chasing me down, chasing me down. I'm doing the long haul, running all over town, A station to A station, I see the skunk ape, chasing me down. I'm doing the long haul, running all over town, Starting in the north, Tallahassee. Starting Central Florida, Tempe, Ocala, Orlando, Day City. Green Swamp, headed down south. Headed to the Keys, Lake to Ocean. Miami, out to the East Coast. Daytona, Jacksonville, Pioneer Trail. On a single trail, running 1 to 100 miles. A station to A station, all around. The Florida Trail Runner. Feet hit dirt where the palm trees sway. Mossy oaks, palmetto pines, and cypress knees. All grass bending, go find your way. Swarm mist rising, every step I take, I feel it flow. Beach sunrises, beach sunsets, sugar sand all around. From the Swanee River to the St. John's, from